Oh boy, it's Magic the Gathering time again! But this time we're here in a more unofficial capacity. Originally, this video was going to be titled The Unofficial History of Magic the Gathering, but to be honest, there isn't a lot to say about unofficial projects. Operating in a sort of legal grey area, there are a number of clients out there that let you play Magic, usually online against other people, and for free no less. In general, they let you make a deck with any of the cards, images downloaded separately of course, wouldn't want to infringe on any of those pesky copyrights. There's rooms for different formats, and there's matchmaking that lets you play against people online. Depending on the client, there's even other card games available to play. These clients are usually a good way to test a deck without dropping money on it, which can be useful before hitting up a tournament, or just for playing Magic for free if you're so inclined. Most popular ones would probably be Cockatrice, Xmage, and Untap.in, the last of which you can see on the screen right now. Hell, there's a mod for Tabletop Simulator with all the cards in it, so you can play a game using Tabletop Simulator's 3D environment, just as long as you track everything yourself. They're all free, barring Tabletop Simulator's entrance fee for the base game of course, and while people may favour different clients for different reasons, there is one client out there that offers something that none of the others do. MTG Forge. First entering development in 2007, Forge was created, much like those other clients, to be a free way to play Magic. While it wouldn't be until 2015 that rudimentary network play would be added, in 2010 attempts were made to try and add a single player campaign. However, Forge is open source and the developer of the single player campaign left in 2012, leaving it unfinished. It was nearly a decade later, in 2021, that a different adventure mode would officially be added. When you load the mode up for the first time and select a new game, you're asked to choose a name, an avatar, and a colour. This is Magic of course, so the colour will decide your starting deck. You also get to choose the kind of deck you start with, be it a random pile of cards in that colour or an actual constructed starter deck. I'm not a masochist by any means, so I suggest a constructed deck, but more on that later. When you've made your freak choice, it's time to start the game. Welcome to Shandalar. It's deja vu all over again. But no, I'm not joking, we're back in Shandalar folks. Adventure Mode is a reimagining of the 1997 Microprose game. And when I say reimagining, I mean it. There are a lot of changes, but the basics remain the same. There are 5 guildmasters in the world. The goal of the game is to defeat them. To do so, you need to travel the world visiting towns, beating opponents and accruing cards. The map is randomly generated and so are the quests that you receive in towns. Enemies that chase you on the overworld have certain themes and decks, and pretty quickly you'll learn which ones you want to fight and which to avoid. But that's about where the copied mechanics end, because everything is either tweaked for quality of life reasons or is flat out different. For starters, and this is huge, nearly the entirety of the Magic the Gathering card database is available in the game. It's missing a few things like unset cards and things like Chaos Orb, but nearly every other card is here. I even found Aswan Jaguar, one of the Shandalar only digital cards, as well as a number of Arena Alchemy only cards. This is a huge number of cards for you to search through, and you'll be seeing a lot of variety. It sometimes got a bit weird as certain versions of cards didn't update with the art correctly, leaving me with this base version of a card. While that might not seem like a huge issue, over time the cards lacking art made my brain parasites tingle in the most horrible of ways. So much so that I would go out of my way not to use them whenever I could. It's also kept up to date, to a nearly insane degree. For instance, the Final Fantasy set had some spoilers released while I was filming, and the next day, bam, there they are in the game. Same thing happened for the SpongeBob Secret Lair, and then again for Tarkir Dragonstorm. Towns in the original Shandalar would have only one shop with just a few cards in it. And that was fine when you were dealing with a few hundred cards, but tens of thousands? Well, you need more shops. And you're in luck because, see this town? Nearly all these buildings sell cards. The different symbols outside the front of each shop give an indication of the card types they sell. For instance, a shop with this lightning bolt symbol is selling instants and sorceries. This one is selling the equipment subtype. This one, the weird glowy mountain, is non-basic lands. There are a lot of symbols and you'll have to figure them all out as you go. Every town has a lot of shops and there are a lot of towns, so you'll have no shortage of cards to browse through. There are 2 resources for you to pick up as you adventure, gold and crystals. You get these for defeating enemies, but they can also be found as treasure on dungeon maps. Crystals can be used to reroll the stock in a shop, while gold is used to buy cards. You can trade one of these resources for another in town, and also sell cards you don't want for gold. Unlike the Microprose game, there is no basic economy. Instead, increasing reputation in a town will make their prices just a little bit cheaper, although it didn't really affect me once I started adventuring properly. You can also use these resources to join events at any inn. There's a draft and jumpstart available, as well as an arena in capital cities. These mirror their real-world counterparts, where you make a deck out of cards that you're given, choosing one at a time for draft or choosing multiple themes for jumpstart. You get to keep the cards at the end, as well as gaining some additional rewards, such as gold and crystals. I didn't do these often. I preferred to use the deck I was working on rather than random cards, and I preferred exploring over sitting in town, but they are a semi-decent way of getting some cards early on. Different kinds of cards are easier to find in the different parts of the map. Each area will lean towards carrying cards normally associated with its colour. For example, if you're trying to find goblin cards, a predominantly red card type, you'll want to be in the red area, and so on. You can also only get basics of a certain colour in the corresponding area of the map. This wasn't clear at first, so it took me a while before I was properly able to add another colour to my deck, but as we'll see, this didn't really matter in the end. As mentioned before, enemies will come with a variety of themes and decks, and varying difficulties too. They'll usually drop cards from within a certain pool, or cards directly from their deck. There's no anti-system in this game. Instead, if you lose a little bit of health. This makes it so that dying isn't really that punishing, but as the game goes on, you'll more than likely want to avoid the majority of enemies chasing you, as they won't have much of a challenge to offer after a certain point. You can't pay them to go away in this game, but in the overworld, enemies only move when you move, so you can avoid them pretty easily at least. The enemy variety is great though, with enemies really leaning into a certain theme and using cards that you would never see in any other format. Speaking of enemies, this is the battle screen, and of all the MTG games out there, this is probably the most readable one. The UI elements may look a little bit on the amateur side, but it's really great. It's so slick and so easy to use and read. On the left hand side are the phases, like in the original Shandalar. Also like the original Shandalar, they'll respect your time and move on if you have nothing to do in a phase, and if you click on an icon, the game will stop when it gets to the corresponding phase. To the left of that are the various areas of the battlefield. For instance, the top one is your hand, there's the top of your deck, the graveyard, the exile zone, etc. All places that are relevant for you to look. You can even look at your opponent's areas, although you will only see public knowledge unless there's some reason to see more. The game will stop when you have priority and give you a chance to react to something, as long as you have a chance to react to something. And it even automatically taps mana in a generally decent way, although there are a few weird cases like filter lands or things like Cabal coffers not working correctly. However, you can just do it yourself if you don't trust it, so it's not really that big a deal. Outside of the regular functions you'd see in every Magic game, there are some other cool features here too. You can set triggers to automatically go a certain way, always yes, always no, always harvest in a certain way, etc. While I didn't use this too often, this is incredibly welcome as certain decks will work so much better with it. My only real criticisms of the battle screen are that it can be a little bit easy to accidentally click through a phase that you didn't mean to, but I think this is more to do with the frequency of battles than the actual screen itself. Also, when your board gets wide, it can be a bit difficult to see it all, and especially some of the boss boards. If you don't scroll fully, you might miss an attack that you didn't realise was coming, and the scroll itself can feel a little weird and floaty. Overall though, it's great and easily the best mechanical, if not the prettiest, digital representation of a game of Magic. Whereas Shandalar had artifacts for you to teleport to sieges or whatever, Forge has equipment. This comes in different forms, and provides bonuses both in and out of battle. The first one you get is an item to teleport you back to the centre of the map for a crystal. This can be pretty useful, and there's one in every area to teleport you to that area's capital. Then there's gear you can equip, but not like the equipment card type, actual equipment for your character. For instance, if you equip the shield, you get a 0/3 wall token creature in play at the start of every battle. Neat! There are a number of different kinds of equipment to find, with each capital carrying a few options each, and they all do some pretty interesting things. Overall, these are one of the most interesting additions to the game, and something I was always excited to get and try out. Quests have been expanded quite a bit too. In the original Shandalar, you'd go to a certain area with a certain resource or go defeat a certain enemy, usually within a time limit. Forge does away with the time limits and makes the base quests repeatable. They're a little bit more random, but they're a little bit more engaging. Sometimes anyway. There's the basic kill X amount of a certain enemy type quests. These get old pretty fast. There are some quests multiple parts, which are pretty decent if you can finish them, but they might take you all over the map. Generally, the best quests are when you're asked to go clear a certain dungeon. Early on, they'll be a decent enough challenge, but also net you some pretty good resources. They're different to the original Shandalar's dungeons in that they don't just have the rarest cards in them. There's a lot more variety to them too, with areas themed around certain things, like this orc camp. Unlike the overworld, enemies wander around independent of you. You might have patrol routes in a dungeon, and there'll be a clear boss character for you to defeat. Each region also has a hard dungeon quest line to find, and these are no joke. When you enter one of these dungeons, certain effects will always be active for you and the enemy the enemy decks are generally made around this. The quest log will let you know when you have one of these harder dungeon quest lines, and they really require playing for a bit and building a better deck before you can realistically beat them. Whereas most battles in the game require you to defeat the enemy just once, the bosses in these dungeons will be best of 3s. And on top of this, these bosses will not just have the static effect in play, but also an extra boss effect for the fight. For example, the hard dungeon in the colourless area is an artifact based dungeon headed up by Slowbad, a goblin artificer character from the actual lore. The passive effect for all fights in this dungeon is that artifacts are creatures in addition to their normal types, with power and toughness equal to their converted mana cost. Slowbad himself then has the ability that when he takes combat damage, he creates that many scrap artifacts. These are just basic tokens that don't do anything by themselves, but at the start of his upkeep, if he has 5 or more, he makes a construct token with power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts he controls. And that by itself is nasty enough, but if he controls 10 or more scrap tokens, he makes a Darksteel Colossus, an 11/11 indestructible artifact creature with trample. This thing can kill you pretty damn easily if you don't plan around it. He has 40 life to begin with, so he'll be spawning at least a few of these guys if you deal combat damage to him. And you need to deal with them or figure out another way to make him lose life. These dungeons are a great challenge and are a real good indicator of your power level. If you're able to beat a boss for even one round, you're doing pretty well. Once you're strong enough, you can attempt the Guildmaster's dungeon. Each Guildmaster is located in their respective area, roughly around the center of the region. There are 5 mini-bosses in each area and you have to beat 4 to open the way to the Guildmaster. These bosses aren't the hardest things ever, but some will surprise you. When you defeat a Guildmaster, you get a key. In total, there are 6 to get. 1 for each Guildmaster, and when you use all 5 to free the Mox Jewel you want, there is 1 last key to unlock an additional endgame challenge near the center of the map. This sounds fairly straightforward, but with the huge card pool, it can be quite difficult to get a strong enough deck together quickly, especially if you are relatively new to the game. More experienced eye might be able to spot combo pieces and high value cards fairly handily, but even still, you can get unlucky re-rolling shops. To help with this, each capital has a smith. The smith kinda lets you target craft cards by filling in a number of conditions. For instance, if you want to get, say, a Basalt Monolith, a fairly common infinite combo piece, you can specify a set that it appeared in, then the CMC, in this case 3, the color of the card and the rarity. With these modifiers, it will reduce the pool of random cards it rolls from. This gets exorbitantly expensive for each fill you fill out, and it is not guaranteed to roll what you want, depending on the set, so I never found myself using this much. So that's the general gist of the game. I don't have a huge amount of criticisms for what they've done here, the framework is pretty solid. Hitboxes at towns can get a little weird, I guess, with locations sometimes kidnapping you off the overworld, even though you're pretty sure you're clear of it. Walls can feel kinda sticky too, like you can get caught on a wall and while you technically aren't moving anymore, you still do count as walking, so overworld enemies can catch up to you. I feel like this might be kind of intentional though, to catch you out sometimes. But as long as you stop moving when you walk into something, you'll be fine. For my playthrough, I decided to go with mono black for my starting colour, and I chose the constructed mode for my starter deck. This gave me a red-black vampire deck. It was pretty decent, it was 40 cards with 17 lands, a good split for a 40 card deck. I had plenty of low cost cards for me to play. For a total beginner, this deck would be a good start, and for me, a more experienced player, I was able to go quite a distance with it before it needed significant changes. So first up, I picked up some quests in the neutral area. I got a lot of kill X of a certain kind of enemy quests, and while the rewards were welcome at first, I quickly outgrew these quests. Pretty quickly I picked up the Mechanical Problems quest, which required me to go and fight Slowbad. The quest log told me that this was a hard quest, so I left it for a while till I got stronger. I explored the neutral area, clearing some dungeons and completing quests for random towns. I even came across this castle with a locked door and something on the other side. For those that don't know, that's Emrakul, an Eldrazi Titan. Eldrazi are the Magic the Gathering version of Lovecraftian old gods. Luckily for me though, the door was locked, so it seems like this might be something for later. I quested around for a while, killing elves, bandits, demons, a dog. I even got this one quest to get the internal structure of apprentice green wizards. The internal structure of what I'm assuming are teenagers, or at best, young adults. Huh. Well, look, whatever, as long as I get paid.
Yes, science!
Eventually I got a quest to go and clear out a mine. It wasn't marked as a difficult quest, but it ended up being tough enough. The mine had 3 Eldrazi encounters in it. Luckily it wasn't any of the Eldrazi Titans, it was just some minions, but the boss of the area was quite tough and my vampire deck was being put through its paces. Speaking of the vampire deck, I was having difficulty upgrading it. I didn't realise at the time, but the various coloured areas would roll shops with the tribes associated with those areas, and I had been sticking mostly to the centre, so I hadn't found a vampire shop yet. Instead, I'd been re-rolling any black, Rakdos and non-basic land stores I came across, and while I had gotten a few upgrades, it was starting to feel like finding any vampires at all might be more difficult than I thought. I found a few stores that sold boosters, so I re-rolled a few and tried to get some Zendikar packs. With Flying, Death Touch and Lifelink, the Vampire Nighthawk card seemed like one of my best options early on. Death Touch ended up being a great defensive option. Quite often the AI wouldn't attack and lose something to it unless it could kill you. Flying and Lifelink similarly would chip away health while topping mine up, effects that a lot of vampires are known for. Between the Nighthawks and some decent removal spells, I wasn't long defeating the Eldrazi boss. Nice! I was feeling pretty confident now, so you know what? Let's try the Slowbad quest. I arrived at Slowbad's dungeon. The minions were tough enough. With the effect of having all their artifacts be creatures equal to their converted mana cost, it meant that they got lots of free creatures, as well as things like mana rocks or utility artifacts. My terror removal spell couldn't hit artifact creatures either, so they became useless and I had to cut them from my deck. But between my Shitehawks and the other low-cost vampires supporting each other, I was able to deal with most of the minions easily enough. With most of the dungeon clear, it was time to try the big boss himself. I was feeling good. Surely he couldn't be that much harder, right? Holy shit, he wiped the floor with me again and again and again. So yeah, you know what? I'm not ready for this, not by a long shot. I went back out into the world and decided to explore a bit more, maybe hit up some other less difficult dungeons, see if I could maybe find some more upgrades. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but it seems like you can get multiple copies of the same quest in your log from different towns. You can hand the quest in multiple times, so you can double dip on rewards. However, you can only take on 6 quests overall, so I ended up with 3 copies of the Mechanical Problem quest. Sure, I could have abandoned them and taken a rep hit, but at the time I didn't want to do that. I grinded out the lower level quests for a bit, got some resources together and went looking for the colourless store. I had intended to re-roll it for artifacts so that I could make use of the static effect during the Slowbad fight. However, as I was looking for one, I completed a quest to kill some Eldrazi and... Oh my. Hey Emrakul, how you doing? So I re-rolled the colourless store for more artifacts and more Eldrazi, and with the cards from the Eldrazi boss earlier, I put together an Eldrazi deck. It was slower than the Vampire deck, which was more of an aggro, mid-rangey kind of strategy, low-cost cards that I could throw out quickly. The Eldrazi deck, on the other hand, was mana ramp into big boys with devastating effects. I decided to make the deck mostly mono-black so as to make use of some demonic tutors that I had come across, as well as some board clears like Damnation. Slowbad was able to generate a big board, sure, but with the ability to steal it or outright annihilate it? I had to try it out. So I returned to Slowbad's dungeon. The smaller enemies had respawned, which wasn't really a problem, just annoying. But hey, if Slowbad would fall, so would they, so I beelined right for the boss. And you know what? Ain't no robots got shit on Eldritch Gods from beyond the veil of the universe. Slowbad annihilated. And for defeating him I got a number of things. Some cards, some resources, plus 1 max life. But the best item I got from him were his boots, which when equipped increased my movement speed and my life, and in battle passively gave artifact creatures I controlled +1/+1. I wasn't really planning on running artifact creatures, but hey, neat. I handed in all 3 instances of the quest and got some decent rewards. I was sick of the neutral area by now though. I spent a long time here, and when I had wandered a little bit into the red and white areas previously, both my Vampire and Eldrazi deck had black in them, so I decided to hit up the black area next. Things went much the same at first. I picked up quests, explored around. I located the Black Guildmaster's dungeon. I swapped back to the Vampire deck, which I had found a few upgrades for, like this Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. He made it so that whenever I gained life, enemies lost that much life, and with vampires like my Shitehawks making me gain life on the regular, this was going to be solid. By this point, I had upgraded the deck to be 60 cards, with multiple copies of several vampires, and it was really effective at dealing with the vast majority of weaker enemies. I quested around, cleared out some dungeons, and got some new cards. I came across this one really cool dungeon. At one end was a building that had a basement leading to another map. Inside were a number of interesting fights, some secret switches that released treasure, and enemy types I hadn't seen anywhere else. It culminated in this fight with a torturer who had, by far, the most capital F frustrating deck to fight against. Forced discard, sacrifice, removal, etc. It was actual torture. I guess it tracks. He wasn't the hardest thing ever, and I did manage to beat him after only 1 failed attempt. But oh man, even now I shudder thinking about fighting him again. Eventually I got a quest to go defeat Slimefoot, and this was marked as a hard quest. Aha, I thought, the Eldrazi deck will surely deal with this. And you know what? Yeah, it did. Easily enough too. I felt Slimefoot was a bit easier to deal with than Slowbad. Just the sheer number of creatures Slowbad gained due to the March of the Machines effect was so overwhelming. Slimefoot, however, was still far tougher than your average enemy. I never realised how many cards there were that did things with spore counters. So I returned to town to hand in the Slimefoot quest and... Wait a second, what the hell is that shop? Oh my god. By now, I'd quite a few resources, so it was time to get re-rolling. If I was lucky, I'd get a few more copies of the Vamps I was low on, maybe another Rakish Air or two wouldn't go amiss. And another Vito would be nice. Yeah, this was gonna be great. Wait a second, what? If an enemy loses life, I gain that much life.
Releasing control Launch restriction systems 3, 2, 1. Approval of Situation A recognized, commencing the Cromwell invocation. Ability restrictions lifted for limited use until the enemy has been rendered silent. It's time to educate you on how a real vampire does battle!
With Emrakul down, I returned to the starting area, only to be told that this was most of the content of the game so far and that Chapter 1 was complete. While that means I probably technically haven't finished the game yet, that was quite the adventure, and honestly, if it just ended there, I would have felt entirely satisfied with it. I could continue playing if I wanted, and continue to build up my collection, make other decks and try and find specific cards, but for now, I think my adventures in Forge are done. If you'd like to give it a try, there will be a link to this GitHub page in the video description. If you're a fan of Magic, I highly suggest giving this a go. No official game comes close to the single player experience this game gives you. I still can't believe something like this is just out there for free. I had that much fun with it. That's all for now, folks. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like it, subscribe for more weird, obscure games, I guess, and feel free to comment. Let me know if you want more Magic the Gathering content or any other suggestions you might have. For the next video, I want to get away from Magic the Gathering and card games in general, at least for a while anyway. And you know what? The Final Fantasy cards give me an idea.